Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review.
Okay, please get comfortable as we begin our program. I'm now going to welcome our special guest. And welcome to this global conference call, Howard Martin. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, thank you very much for having me, and greetings to everyone, all of you that are listening to the program live or later on, wherever you are in the world. And I hope that, the conversation that Steve and I have today will offer something that can help in some way to improve your life. I would like to say, Steve, that I just got back from a trip. I was in the tropics. Now I'm in the cold and rain. I did get a little congestion when I got back home, so if I cough, that's what's going on. I actually feel better than I sound, but just letting people know now, if a little cough comes out, I'm really okay.
All righty, good to know. Well, it's great to have you with us. This is our first program with Howard Martin. Howard knows we've had Deborah Rosman, who's also one of the key executives there with the Doc Childre at HeartMath, has been a part of these programs, but we haven't had an opportunity to do something with you, Howard, and it's just great to have you with us. And I know you squeezed this in with, you were mentioning, you're just kind of getting back from international travel. So thanks for being here. So much ground to cover. And also, let me thank listeners. There's Asim in Pune, India, has already come in with a question. And Asim, we'll be sure to get to that question here in just a moment. And others, do feel free to bring your questions in as well. Okay, as we get started, I thought, Howard, I mentioned in the introduction that you've been involved with HeartMath all the way back to the beginning in 1991, and I remember that 1991 time frame. That's actually just as the Internet was being born. Must have been a revolutionary place to work back then, HeartMath. So can you share a little bit of your personal story? It always is interesting to hear. How did you get involved with HeartMath back then? What was the insight or the epiphany or whatever that caused you to get involved with them?
Well, I'll be glad to. We're going to have to go back into prehistoric times now, though, for me to go that. It goes back to me as a young man in my early 20s, at that time a rock musician, in and around the music scene in North Carolina. And there was a time period in the early 70s back then when spirituality, Eastern spirituality in particular, began to sort of come into Western world, and different people were reading books about various things, and I began to do that as well. So there was this sort of spiritual interest that I developed as a very young man, about age 21. It was about that same time period that I met Doc Childre, the man who founded HeartMath. He was just a few years older than me, but it became obvious very quickly that, he had an awareness that embraced mine, just in pure common sense, if nothing else. So I became friends with Doc. There were others around at the same time as well, and I think what we did, Steve, is in the midst of the chaos and confusion of life and young people trying to grow up, we developed bonds and friendships that endured. And we kept those bonds and friendships really solidly intact for a long time. And so what eventually I left the music business and all of that, and what we ended up in was an exploration of ourselves, a deep exploration. We held down ordinary jobs, but that was just to pay the rent. The focus was really on how can we grow and change and evolve as human beings. And Doc's approach was a heart-centric one. It wasn't just based upon, soft, squishy feelings of the heart. It was based upon an unfolding intelligence that he knew and felt that all people had inside. So we worked pretty diligently in all of that, and we were in eastern North Carolina. So we were not involved in the sort of the mainstream parade of the spiritual unfoldment. We didn't have that to draw upon, which was actually, in many ways an advantage, because we had to sort of pioneer our own way through this. We did that in obscurity for almost 15 years, and we didn't have an ambition of ever being an organization, certainly no vision for myself of ever being an author and a speaker or anything like that. It just wasn't in the cards. Didn't think about it. Didn't ever see it as a possibility. It didn't have a desire for it. But over time, I think the pureness of our own work, I think the dedication that we had, the one-pointedness of Doc in his desire to develop people, led to magnetizing other relationships. And some of those happened to be in California. And actually how we met them was by reading their books. We didn't have any. We just read their books. And so we ended up in a situation in the late 80s, early 90s where we had some really close associates and friends living in Northern California that had some businesses and had their own consciousness university. And after deliberate thought and taking our time, really, we decided that we would try to put together some kind of an organization that could develop a system, a heart-based system that could help empower people through the changing times that were happening and that we felt were going to accelerate. So Doc, myself, and some of the others who'd been living in North Carolina moved to California, to the town of Boulder Creek, which is near Santa Cruz, California. So here comes the Southern boys, out to California. Hey, Bubba, how you doing? In the middle of California. We started with nothing, Steve. We didn't have investment money. We didn't have a business plan. What we had was a vision. We had a desire. We had a deep desire to care for people. And so we started HeartMath that way, and we built it step by step, piece by piece, writing a book, meeting people, putting together some training programs, eventually, our technology. But in the early days, we started on science. We really wanted to underpin whatever we said with scientific understanding. So we built it piece by piece, step by step. 25 years later, here I am. And it's been a magnificent adventure with more to come. We are what I call a big little organization today. We employ somewhere between 80 and 100 people. We operate all over the world. We do business in over 125 countries. I think the HeartMath system has become a significant contributor to the well-being of people, and I think the HeartMath organizations have become, for lack of a better word, a very respected brand in the field of personal growth and consciousness growth and organizational transformation. So maybe that's a long answer to your question, but it's a long story.
Yeah, no, I love the story, and as you shared too, we were talking, Howard, just before we came on the program. You were sharing how over in Germany you were in the green room and speaking with other speakers, and they were thanking you for the work of HeartMath that is just helping this whole consciousness movement, this spiritual movement that where we talk about our oneness with the divine and each other, to progress, because it's this heart-based research that you've done and are doing that really brings a lot of people on board. Many people, especially as they're becoming aware of consciousness and spirituality, want to hear the science behind it, and that brings them on board. And you all have done an incredible job there, haven't you?
Well, I'm going to look at sort of the philosophical tenets behind our business. There's several that stand out, but one relates to what you just said, is this. We never want to position ourselves as competitive. We never position ourselves as the thing to do or the best thing or anything like that. That language just doesn't show up in how we position ourselves to the world. We've always seen ourselves as a friendly facilitator. We've been trying to facilitate people in organizations however we can do it in practical, pragmatic ways. We have to be a business, but we never see ourselves as trying to push our stuff on others. We're there to support. And, our new brand, which people will begin to see early next year, is called Add Heart. It's a plus sign and a heart. And it's all about adding heart. That's what we do. Heart is a concept that covers mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So it's adding the qualities of the heart to everything that we do. So whether you're a spiritual person or a yoga teacher or a doctor or a police officer or a mother or a grandmother or whatever you are, we feel that adding the qualities of the heart is a good thing to do. It never takes away from anything, but it simply adds another level of quality to whatever it is we're doing.
Yes, awesome. Boy, let's go right down into it. I've got many questions that talk about the collective and global coherence initiative and things like that. But with what's going on in the world today, I'm sure you're feeling into this too, Howard. There's just a lot of unrest, a lot of unease. This personal coherence can be light right now. People are, even in my home with our kids, really creating the spiritual experiences is what we call it in my home, but doing the things that keep us in heart coherence. And so let me bring in this question from Asim. It's in Pune, India, and Asim says, how can we improve heart coherence, and can it influence and change deep wounds and heal relationships? So, we're kind of going in a personal direction here as we start.
Sure. Well, Asim, thank you for your question, first of all. Yeah, we actually can. That's what we do. We help people develop that connection to their own heart, and that's called heart coherence. And when you look at it through a measurable scientific lens, where we're connecting people to who they really are, to the core of their authentic self. We're helping to engender the emotional qualities that are associated with heart, like more care, more kindness, compassion, certainly appreciation for the good things in life. And, that's another way that you develop it. It's simply by demonstration of those type of qualities consistently. And also learning to shift emotional states quickly. We're all going to have ups, we're all going to have downs, but how quickly do we move out of the downs back to the ups and do it in a real, comprehensive way? So the whole HeartMath system, consisting of the tools and the techniques, technology, and science, is all designed really to do exactly that, to unfold heart intelligence within people, something they already have inside, but just needs to be, for all of us, me included, continually upgraded and dusted off and evolve within us. When that happens, it does a lot to heal us in many ways. I think the term that Asim used was heal wounds. Well, yeah, life is life, and we are going to take on certain emotional memories and scars and things as we go through the process of it. And certainly I think that connecting to that deeper part of ourselves, to our authentic self, is actually what heals. That's what brings us back. It's what gives us the ability and resilience to move beyond the things that we've experienced in the past that seem to limit us in the now. And so heart gives us that ability. A term that I often use about my heart is that I believe it's my own best friend. And it's the most reliable guide that I have to making decisions in life and to moving through whatever challenges that I face, whether they come from past experience or whether they're things that I experience in real time now.
Yeah, beautiful. And, of course, we in Humanities Team, we talk about just our connection with the divine, and the heart, this one presence, which can be source or even universe. We can use secular terms, but or presence, but really connecting with that presence from our heart, and then just creating this healing and things that you're talking about. But I love the languaging you all use. You said you unfold heart intelligence within people. So that's kind of the track you go down. It's how you frame this and talk about it. And I'm just wondering, I'd love to go even deeper here again, Howard, because in today's world, this is following the election here in November in the United States. There's just a lot of, among many anyway, not everybody, but a lot of unrest, and a lot of sense of is everything going to be okay? So is there anything experiential that we might do, or just something you could talk about that brings in this whole aspect of how we unfold our heart intelligence?
Well, sure. First of all, let me just characterize the times a little bit and maybe give people a sense of comfort in that they're not alone. We're living in an era where disruption is the constant. As part of the evolutionary process that we're going through, we are in a position now where we are making dynamic choices individually and collectively that dictate the future of our world. It's a dimensional shift in consciousness that's taking place that's driving these changes. It's actually moving us in a very good direction. Now, we have ups, we have downs, we have events that take place on a global level that are, disconcerting and horrific. But the real trajectory is we were moving to a new world that has a much more higher degree of oneness and wholeness and cooperation and in those type of characteristics to it. That, to me, is actually happening. Now, yeah, I see it all. I go through my ups and downs as well as I look at the global events. But the disruption that we're experiencing is not always bad. It just means things are changing. The ways we've been doing things are not going to work the same way that they used to. Now, you take something like the political elections in the United States, they're just one thing. They're just symbolic of a real desire for change. It can come from frustration. It can come from feeling disenfranchised. Lots of different reasons that are underneath that. But when people just say, I've had enough of the existing system, I want a new one, well, maybe what happens in regards to that is that, people who like one candidate over another feel disappointed. But what's going on at a deeper level is it's actually forcing something to change because people are finally just saying enough's enough. Well, again, I'm not a proponent of frustration, anger, resentment, those kind of feelings that drive change, but sometimes that's what happens. So whether we see it here in the United States, whether we see it through Brexit in the European Union, UK situation, other type of political situations around the world, I see the disruption, and I see people are desiring change. That desire will eventually lead to very positive change. In the interim, it can be, as I said, pretty disconcerting when we start seeing it through the viewpoints of like how things might go down or what's going to happen. The truth of the matter is we don't quite know. So one of the things that I always try to do in this is a couple things, Steve. One is I try not to overproject. Projection is just like trying to figure this out, and usually it comes from a fear. It's like, what ifs and what if this and what if that. And a lot of times you just don't know. Sometimes underline that with a great Mark Twain quote, the American author Mark Twain, who once said, I've had a lot of tragedy take place in my life, and at least half of it actually happened. So the projections that we have. The other thing that I have to try to do, and this is sometimes difficult, is I have to maintain a higher sort of frequency of compassion. I can't allow myself to sink too low into the sympathy and empathy. I have to hold it at a higher place. And I think that there are two reasons that I need to do that. One is it's the highest form of service that I believe I can do. And secondly, it keeps me more regenerated so that I can be the best Howard Martin I can be. In real time right now, there's one that's been bothering me, and it's one that I've been working on for a couple of weeks now, and it comes up for me in every meditation that I do, and I always have to lift the feeling. And it's a situation happening in Aleppo, Syria, where this city has been bombarded into nothing, and there's people trapped, and they're dying, they're starving, they're living in a total war zone, and it's an unbelievably hellish existence. And there are women and children and all kinds of things that are in that situation. And I'm watching this with great interest. Well, sometimes I see a story or read a story, and I can just feel that frequency of compassion go down into, oh, God, kind of a feeling. And when that hits me, I realize that's okay, but now bring it back up, little guy. Come on, you can do better than that. And pull it back up to that true care and compassion for the highest, best outcome for that situation and for those people. And to offer that compassion is to sort of wrap my arms around them and say, let me do what I can. I can't go there, but just let me hold you a little bit. Let me wrap my arms around you and see if we can make this a little bit better somehow. And that's another way in which I deal with all this disruption that's going on and the ups and downs and all around. So the two key points there is I try not to overproject, and I try to hold a higher feeling of compassion and understanding as we go through this transformational period.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, try not to overproject and try and stay in compassion, not go down into empathy, such as this Aleppo, Syria situation, where it can spiral down into fear, where there's just a sense of, oh, my God. And then, of course, in fear, there's just nothing that's good that's happening, right, which is so wonderful about your work, because your work is sharing how we can just stay in the strong place of presence, of connection, of heart intelligence, of spiritual experience, where we're in that higher place, and we are, in a sense, radiating that out, to the people that we touch in the world. And then we're a positive agent for change as opposed to one that maybe isn't helping much.
Yeah, I think it's well said.
Well, awesome. Well, let's let me just stay in this personal thread just a little more. If we talk about this in the context of family and home, I've got 2 kids and I'm happily married. Are these? Is it really this process that you described, trying not to overproject and staying in compassion, that is your process, for home and community as well? Or are there any other pieces to this that you'd share?
Oh gosh, we put a lot of emphasis on children and on family, on home. People may not realize it, but there are actually 2 parts of the HeartMath organizational structure. There's a for-profit and a nonprofit. HeartMath Institute is the nonprofit. HeartMath LLC is the for-profit. On the nonprofit side, we do a lot in education. We do a lot working with children. We have a whole suite of offerings. If you go to the heartmath.org website, you can see various things, books and games and things like that designed just for children to teach them about their own heart and to have tools and techniques they can apply. I think, that's very important. The family itself is morphing and changing as well. And certainly how children perceive today and the world in which they are living that they are perceiving is also very different. And so I think we do everything we can in that regard to support, the bonds that happen through family, whether it's blood family or whether through relationships. And certainly that expands that into community and things like that. And we have people around the world that are doing that kind of work. One example is I have, partners and licensees in various other countries, and there's a project I think will be starting next year in Sweden, for example, where they're going to create a heart coherent city. A small city, I think 20,000 or 30,000 people, where they're training all the infrastructure leaders. That's police, fire, government, social services, healthcare, all that, in HeartMath tools and techniques to engender those type of qualities in the community infrastructure, which hopefully will filter down into how people live and function within that town. So there's lots of things like that are taking place around the world in association with HeartMath. So to answer your question, yeah, family, children, the development of young people, community, all that's a part of what we aspire to contribute to.
Yeah, awesome. Let me bring back another question here. It says, how can we measure heart coherence? I'm coaching CEOs. Can I get to software and hardware here? He's in India.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that happened along the way for us, is we did a lot of scientific research understanding heart-brain-body communication. That was one of the things that we became most famous for, actually, is unfolding that story. Now, to measure that heart-brain-body communication, you look at changes in our heart rhythms, and that's different than heart rate like a fitness monitor. Fitness monitor is measuring how fast or slow it's beating. Heart rhythms measure the time between heartbeats. And the medical measurement for measuring heart rhythms is called heart rate variability analysis. So our scientists became experts in heart rate variability. And we took that understanding and we developed technology that people, ordinary folks, can use. It measures your heart rhythms using heart rate variability to analyze them. We developed a patented algorithm that scores those rhythms for the degree of order that they are projecting, the degree of coherence. It displays those rhythms and the coherence changes and scores on a screen. It allows you to store the data, store the information. You connect to the heart cloud. A lot of features. I won't get into all of that. But we have been offering those to the world now since around the year 2000. There have been millions of lives touched by this technology. There are a couple of versions. One, the most popular now, is for mobile devices. We have what's called the Inner Balance Trainer, and it is an app that you download for free from the Apple Store or Google Play Store. It's accompanied with a sensor. That sensor is something you do pay for. You connect that to the app, and now all of a sudden you've got full-blown heart rhythm analysis, coherent scoring, data sharing, all that stuff right there on your mobile device. And so hundreds of thousands of people use it, and many people we have a whole coaching program, by the way, where we train coaches. And lots of coaches who coach people, executives included, use the Inner Balance Trainer as a way of teaching people how to connect more with their own heart intelligence, actually, but also to provide some sort of measurable verification of the process that they're sharing with them, to show these people that they are getting results. So you can go to the HeartMath.com website to read more about this technology. There's Amway Pro, which is a desktop version. Many health professionals use that also. But go to HeartMath.com because you can just read right there what we offer, and certainly it's applicable in the type of work that was brought up by the person who had the question.
All right, awesome. Inner Balance Trainer, and you can go to HeartMath.com to learn more about it and load it down. And as you mentioned, it's a free device, but it's the sensing where a fee kicks in.
You pay for the sensor. We manufacture those, and that's what we sell. But the actual app is free, but it's not much use to you. You can look at it, but it's not much use to you without a sensor. The sensor connects to your ear, picks up the information from your body, translates that into the heart rhythm analysis, and then the algorithm kicks in to score it for the degree of coherence.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds incredible. I've heard about this technology for a while. I haven't tried it, but I should. I'm sure it's amazing and helps you stay in balance yourself, where you can kind of look at how you're doing and during your workday, if things ever look like they're getting out a little bit, you realize it's time to get back into meditation and spiritual experience, huh?
Yeah, I use mine every morning and in the evening as well in my heart-focused meditations. I don't have to have it. It's just cool to have it. It makes that process a bit more enriching for me to use the technology along with it so that I can see my scores and things like that. Then I set goals with the amount of coherence points I want in a week and things like that. It just keep me on track more. And sure, you can use it in the middle of the day as well. Very often we don't have time for that, but there are techniques in the HeartMath system that we can use to bring ourselves back to a more balanced and inner-focused state pretty quickly, actually. And that's what I kind of use in the day as I go through, my daily adventure of all the meetings and the calls and the interviews and God knows what. So I have to practice exactly what we're sharing with the world in order to maintain my own inner balance and peace.
Yeah, I'm sure. True for me as well. Well, let me, if I can, come back to the spiritual, because of course we define ourselves in Humanities Team as a global grassroots spiritual movement, and even our Conscious Business Initiative, which is where we're interfacing with business executives. The key principle there is that we are all one with humanity and all of life. Everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And when people go through our curriculum and community of practice, there are deeply spiritual experiences that are a part of this. Just to say a little more, there are things like conscious commerce and natural capitalism and things that are more focused on the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, but presence is left out. And from our point of view, that you can't leave it out, because presence is ultimate reality. It's this wisdom that's been around over the ages, over the millennia, that says everything that we are all one, everything's interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent. That we do have a source, and we can use lots of spiritual terms to define that source. But I'm bringing this in, Howard, because in conversations with Deborah, she shared that you all come at it exactly the same way. You're not trying to strategic plan everything in a Western way down to the nth detail. That you see that in a sense, that intuition and guidance and all of these things are coming from spirit or source or whatever terms that you might use. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, certainly. I think at a business this our size, we do have a lot of structure. We do have to plan. After our call today, I'm going into a meeting about exactly that, 2017 strategy stuff, And at the same time, I think the way that works best, certainly that works best for me, and I would say for other executives here as well, is that we have to make sure that we're really aligned with the true HeartMath mission in any decisions that we make. And for me, it's all about reducing human suffering in some way in all the insidious forms that human suffering can show up. And so business decisions have to be made, but then there's an intuitive flow that seems to override all of that. You can't plan your way through things anymore. Change is happening too quickly. And the era of disruption is creating too much chaos for you to really have just these totally locked down, clear plans about anything. And that's where intuition comes in. That's where you have to learn to find a flow. You have to base decisions a lot of times on what you really truly feel inside. And sometimes logic, doesn't really hold up, in the same way under that type of scrutiny. So I think that there's a term that a consultant used with me one time a number of years ago that sort of defines how I try to do business or make business decisions. He called it use informed intuition. And what he meant by that was get all your facts, give as much information as you can, and then you're finally going to have to just go with something that feels a certain way to you. That, there's never going to be definitive, yes, this is exactly what we needed to do answers in many very complex business decisions. So intuition plays a very key role in that. So it's an interesting balance. It's one that I have to work at. It's like an interesting balance between the pragmatic, the practical, the logical, the linear, and the more expansive, connected to the larger whole, the bigger mission kind of view. And, being a synthesis for that, I think is one of the most important things that I do as an executive here, is trying to synthesize both of those two aspects into one thing that makes sense.
Yeah, beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you, Howard. Thanks for just taking us into your personal process here. Well, let me come back to to just change in the world. I liked the way you were describing that earlier, where you said people basically were fed up. They wanted a new system, and so we've got change, and change isn't we're not sure where that goes, but change oftentimes takes us in a good direction, even when it doesn't feel that way. So let me come back to that. So, and of course, change is happening quickly, and you often talk about a new world emerging. Let's go to that level, this new world that's emerging. What indications do you see of positive changes that would represent a new world?
Well, certainly I see a change in the conversation that's happening. I think that the dialogue that happens in many places now is a very progressive, open one. I think there are hundreds of millions of people on the planet already right now who have made major changes in themselves. They do operate with values that are different. They have the desire for more cooperation. They have the desire for more peace, more harmony, those kind of things. But it's actually beyond just a sort of soft desire for it. There's a real pragmatic side to this. So a lot of new innovation is happening all over the place. And some of the things that I hear, for example, that CEOs and things say in their own talks, when they talk about, appreciation is the most important aspect that they need to engender in their company. When I hear the CEO, the departed CEO of Costco, say that, culture is not the only thing in business, it's everything. When I see companies like Patagonia that say, okay, this is Black Friday, the biggest sales day of the year, we're going to donate every sale that we get on Black Friday to ecological organizations to help improve the planet. And what's interesting about that is they had projected about a $2 million to $2.5 million day on Black Friday in terms of sales. They had $10 million that day, but they dedicated all the money to other causes. Those are examples of trying to set examples, trying to set a tone from that's just business, but from a business context. But really, the indication that's strongest to me is I see so many demonstrations of people acting intelligently and acting from love and care everywhere that I go. And it doesn't have to be so big, grandiose, overt thing. It can just be the way in which somebody's carrying themselves, the way in which they're interacting with another. Watching somebody suspend, a judgmental reaction, instead sort of gathering very quickly and coming back with a more balanced approach to things. I see more and more of that happening, and what that's letting me know, Steve, is that consciousness itself is changing. And it's filtering down into the psychological part of how we operate, but it's actually happening in a consciousness world. So what I see happening is I see a new world with a completely different set of values, very aspirational, very holistic, very progressive values emerging. And at the same time, there's another world, and I will call it the old world, but I don't want it to feel like it's the bad world. It's just the existing paradigms. And they are not bad. They got us to where we are today. And despite the divisions, the separations, the horrific things that happen in the world, look at what God created. Look at the beauty of it all. Look at the magnificence of the world that we live in. So it's not all bad, but it's time for new. So the new is trying to expand. The old is there. It's entrenched. It feels like it's right. It pushes back. And where those two meet, there's friction. And when we turn on CNN, that's what we see, the friction between old meeting new. In the end of the day, I think, there's no question in my mind that a new world will emerge over the next, I hate to be time predictive, but within a very few number of years, less than 10, we're going to see major changes. Within 50, we're going to see a tremendous amount of change. The world may not even quite look like it looks today. And within 100 or a bit more, I think we'll see a world that operates with a different dimension of consciousness driving it all. It's going to happen that quickly. We are in an era of super high-speed evolutionary change, and it's going to happen quicker than we think.
Yeah, in Humanities Team, we even say it's going to happen in this generation just because of the Internet, because things can spread so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful, just bringing in that evolutionary perspective. And the integral perspective, which is Ken Wilber and his organizations have helped to shape our Conscious Business Initiative and Humanities Team. You talk about the change that we're seeing. And, of course, the integral perspective has this little simple all quadrants, all levels model where on the right side you've got the external world and on the left side you have the internal world. And what Ken says is from an evolutionary perspective, the focus has gone to external here in recent times, and the internal, where we're going within to commune with the divine, has received little attention. And this has created what he calls a flatland, where all the focus is on the external world, and the interior world, where we're communing with the divine source, spirit, has been given little attention. That seems to connect well with some of the things you're talking about here. Is that right, Howard?
Well, stimulation in general is sort of wearing itself out right now. I mean, people have forever, sought to find happiness and peace from the outside in. And every religious and spiritual teaching, or most, let's put it that way, have all said, no, it's an inside-out job, but it takes a while for us to get all that. And so, yeah, it's moving in that direction. I think we're moving more to where we are developing more of those internal capacities. It manifests in different ways, and it doesn't have to be looked at through the same overtly spiritual lenses that we looked at things in the past. But, yeah, there's an inner pull and inner longing and unfolding is happening in people. Some of the things that were satisfying on the outside, the forms of stimulation and things that we go after, are no longer as interesting. And so as a result of that, people begin to turn a bit more inward. And then, unfortunately, when we are faced with so many challenges today, I have compassion when I say that for everyone, especially the listeners today, when we're confronted with so many challenges, very often unexpected challenges, that's when we tend to go a little deeper inside. I think that paradigm can change in the future to where we don't have to have all that in order to have the strong desire to go within. But right now it's still the game in town. So often it takes some challenges and conflict and a lot of things like that that pushes us deeper. And when we do, I think where we end up landing is really we land in our hearts at the core of our authentic self.
Yeah, Barbara Marx Hubbard likes to say the pain of pregnancy precedes the birth. So, yeah, we're kind of in the pain of pregnancy here.
Yeah, but I think this no pain, no gain paradigm is an example of an old paradigm that will change. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, let me bring in another question here. This is from Anda in Los Angeles, and this is Becky. We're talking about Aleppo. And says, thank you, Howard. What stopped me from holding the higher perspective and compassion for events in the Middle East, besides Aleppo, is the willful destruction of archaeological sites in Syria and Iraq, undermining the history and spiritual sites, and the killing of an archaeologist. What can I do to reframe that?
Well, it's always something very specific like that that's going to trigger us. We can have this sort of bigger overview, and then all of a sudden, something like that gets us. I'll share with this listener a personal story that relates to that, so she knows that I'm coming at it from the same place she is. There's been a story of a young Syrian girl who's been tweeting from Aleppo. She's 7 years old. Now, there's been some perspectives on whether she's real or not, but most of the analysis now say she is. She's been getting little tweets out from Aleppo. She's 7 years old. She's been getting bombarded for weeks, and everything around her is death. And, so you try to hold a higher frequency on that, and then I read a tweet that says something like this. It said, last night my house was hit by a rocket. I'm standing in rubble right now. I'm okay, I'm alive, but all my dolls were killed, and I'm sad. And that just hit me right in the heart. The doll line, you know what I mean? The little girl and the dolls, the kind of thing. So there's a trigger. So when I get to that, I realize, well, that's got me triggered. They're destroying archaeological sites in the Middle East. They killed an archaeologist. That's personal to this person who asked the question. And so at that point, you got to back it up again. You got to say, okay, you still pull it up higher than that. It's archaeological sites, and put it in context and perspective, because we're all going to have the things that sort of get us specific to the interest levels that we have. And so there's still a game going on there with us and us. To me, the triggers are there to provide that extra impetus to say, okay, now it's time to shift it. I know it got me. Yes, so what? That got me, and that bothers me, that concerns me. I get it. I've observed myself. I can see that that's what's happening inside of me. I don't feel bad about it. I'm not in self-judgment about it, but I'm going to take it another level now, use my own abilities to shift the emotional state, become more self-responsible, and I'm going to move it back now to a more compassionate, higher view of this whole deal, and not let the triggers eat me for breakfast.
Yeah, awesome. Let me bring in another personal question here, Howard. This is, hello, Howard. I was told by one healer that I have an entity in my heart chakra, and it makes heart walls and wealth leaks. But when I take a deep breath, it often feels like me and someone else is also breathing. Can I get some help?
Well, that's a complex question. I don't know exactly how to answer that one. I would, this is sort of going to sound like a generic sort of answer, but I think there's a deeper truth in this, in what I'm going to say. Whatever's in your heart, the best way to deal with it is just to activate and generate more love. Put out more love to yourself, to others, and to the world, and that'll take care about whatever's going on there. If there's some sort of entity or something that's in your heart, I don't know about all that stuff. But I'm just saying, generate love. If it's anything that's there that's not helpful to you, it can't exist in the same field as love. Love and whatever isn't love cannot exist in the same space. So just put out more love and care, especially to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. Generate a little more kindness, a little more care to everybody you interact with, and to me that would be the best way to deal with it.
Ooh, I love that one. Yeah, because isn't that true? And just there are so many things in the midst of financial or health or whatever the relationship, whatever the crisis might be, that there's so many things, if we just look at the milestones in our life of things that we've been given, people that we have a relationship with who are so meaningful to us, our relationship with God, with the divine, our house, our pets, our friends. There's so much wealth that is in our life if we really just take a moment to really sit and consider what all of that wealth is, because, of course, wealth goes way, way beyond just financial wealth. It includes all of these special things and people and cultures that are in our life. So putting it in that context of just, gratitude and love, that, as you say, problems can't sit there side by side with gratitude and love. One or the other is going to be your domain. Okay, well, let me go to another question here. I think you've been talking to this one some, Howard, but let's go straight at it. What do you mean when you talk about a heart-based world?
It's a world that's embodying more of the actual qualities associated with heart in how we communicate, how we relate, how we make decisions, how we set up structure. It's also using more of an intuitive bandwidth, I'll use that term, intuitive bandwidth of information to navigate life. And so the world itself begins to operate a bit more intuitively, meaning it's not just like, just seeing in the future and all that, but intuition has a practical construct to it. It means like it's helpful in understanding what we should do or not do. It's helpful in choosing the right words in a conversation or choosing the timing for a sensitive conversation. Those kind of aspects of intuition will become much more prevalent and sort of flowing very, very naturally through us as human beings. It's certainly a world that looks for cooperation rather than separation. We live in a very dualistic society, and right now separation's on center stage. The lines are being drawn. There's one side or the other. It's very, very polarized in many ways. In this new heart-based world, those lines become less defined. Sure, there's an allowance for uniqueness and difference and all of that, but not with the same sting of judgment, not with the protectivism, not with the desire to be right or to put something else down in order to preserve ourselves. Those walls are beginning to come down in this new heart-based world. There'll be, again, another level of flowing and cooperation between people. And certainly I think that's going to change the way in which we look at money, the way government functions, the way business functions. I think that there will be less conflict in this new heart-based world, like wars. Already, as horrific as these things that are going on in the world are, there's a lot less people being killed in war today than ever before in the history of humankind. And that will continue to head in that direction. War is the last resort, and people are getting that now. And I think that governments are actually getting that now. It's not a thing that you just jump into to solve a conflict. More and more that's going to happen, and there'll be less war, less conflicts. We've got a long way to go, I admit that, to achieve the things that I just suggested. And there's some hard road that's got to be walked. But I think that there's enough people on the planet now, the hundreds of millions that I mentioned earlier, that already have a desire for these things. And coherence always is more impactful than incoherence. And I believe that in time, that the things that I described and a lot more will unfold. Because a new and different world that I talk about is one we have not seen before. So I think the best we can do now, the best I can do to project what that world would be is to try to put new clothes on what I already know. But I actually believe at a deeper level that what's coming is something that none of us have ever seen before. And so I think that's what I allude to when I say the emergence of a heart-based world is really an unfolding of the qualities of the heart in all the different ways it manifests, applied in a pragmatic, practical sense to daily living.
Yeah, wonderful. Wow, I love that. And what's interesting, Howard, is I'm hearing this from more and more business leaders. Of course, you all work with businesses, but there's an organization called the Adizes Institute. It's based out of Santa Barbara, California. It's in the top 20 of global consulting organizations worldwide. They do work with large companies and even sovereign governments. And Icak Adizes, who leads the organization, blogs about this, about making decisions in the heart and contrasting trips that he takes, such as to India, spiritual trips, with where it's a heart-based culture, heart-based living, with his Western world trips where he enjoys luxurious accommodations and so on, and is talking about how the importance of this and how things are moving in this direction. And then Lance Secretan, who was the CEO of Manpower, which is this huge organization that does recruiting for people, wrote his most recent book is called Love Story, and it's about it's about his wife who passed, and but how that love between he and this beloved individual is the very thing that's needed in business right now. That you were talking about culture and the importance of culture when you were referencing some business leaders, Howard. And Lance Secretan, again, was the CEO of Manpower, and he's saying the very thing that we need to bring into business now is love. So I love it. Okay, let me go to, let's see, there's some more other questions coming in here. Let me just go to a question I've got here, and then I'll bring in at least one more listener question. So let's go to resilience, because that's again, I think you kind of talked around this one here, Howard, but it's an important one right now. So what is resilience, and why is this important now?
Well, resilience is an energy we store up that allows us to sort of deflect the stressors of life. Resilience is just talked about in training programs now, and it's usually talked about as the ability to bounce back. You're down and then you can come back quicker, you can bounce back. That is an important aspect of what resilience is. But where we go to it with the HeartMath is we say, yeah, but that's an energy that you store up, and that energy gets stored through how you manage your emotions. You learn to self-regulate your emotions better. You accumulate more energy. You build up a reservoir. Then when stressors show up, they have less impact. So it's something that you cultivate through practicing, generating more positive emotional states, learning to make quicker emotional shifts inside. Now, another analogy I use for it would be this. Take a snowplow. Snowplow is like on the front of a truck. If there's a lot of snow on the ground, the truck doesn't have a snowplow. It just sort of bumps into the snow. It can't push it. You put this very simple snowplow on the front. It moves into the snow moves off to the side. It cuts right through the snow. The snowplow is still hitting the snow, which is an indication that the challenge or the stressor is still there, but it gives you the ability to move through it. Well, resilience is the same way. When we're more resilient, we have more buoyancy, we have the ability to move through challenges with more poise and more grace. When I'm tired, when I'm feeling, like I'm overwhelmed, when I'm just, beat down a little bit, then everything starts to bother me. It means my resilience meter's low. The gas tank on my resilience is down. All of a sudden, this little things bother me. And when I'm feeling buoyant, when I know that I've got a good internal reservoir of resilience going, then it's no big deal. So what? Kind of an energy, and I can handle things more gracefully. And that's what resilience is. So you cultivate it by using the qualities of the heart, activating your heart's intelligence, doing it with consistency, especially adding more heart when times are good, so that you're using that time to actually build up that resilience reservoir, and then moving on into life. And then when things come up, they'll have less impact, and your ability to bounce back is actually greatly enhanced.
Yeah,
it's important
beautiful.
now because we're going through the changes. I was talking to another friend of mine, author Greg Braden, yesterday. We're going to do a program together next year in June, I think it is. And part of our theme is resilience, and he was talking about, in these times, the changes that are occurring and how resilience is just becoming more and more important. I remember Doc Childre, our founder at HeartMath, telling me one day, look, resilience is not just some buzzword that's going to show up in corporate trainings. It's going to be essential to learn how to increase resilience during the times in which we're living.
Yes. Well, boy, that one, I'm glad I asked that question, because that's a big one today, is how, storing up our own resilience. So as you mentioned, it can be down or it can be buoyant, and what you want to do is just store up so that you have the buoyant, and then of course we're in a place where we can radiate. It just goes back to that whole thing of radiating then all of the kinds of things we want out in the world to the people we touch, and as opposed to the things that comes from feeling stress.
Yeah, but I feel I need to offer this too, Steve, in regards to that. Like, if you're someone right now who's listening, who has been feeling down, who's had a lot of things going on in your life lately that have really depleted you and all that, this can all sound great, but, where you're at right now, you could even begin to feel bad about yourself, that you aren't as resilient or you didn't do enough to be resilient. And that, right at that point there, I want to encourage you to be okay with that, have self-compassion at that point, to realize, look, we're living in challenging times. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to get us and deplete us. And if you find yourself there, the quickest way to get out is just return to your heart, just to find that place inside. I'll use a good old Southern boy analogy right now, too, for that. It's like sometimes when you feel down, you just keep feeling down and down and down. The analogy is this. It's like if you ever find yourself in a hole, the quickest way to get out of it is to stop digging. So if you're feeling down right now, find that place inside where your heart lit, where you are in your heart. Just make contact with that and just have self-compassion and say, this is okay, and then begin to work your way out of that. Because there's going to be a lot of ups and downs and depleted feelings and days as we go through change. That's okay. So be kind to yourself.
If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team Transformational Education Programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.